Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Let's get right down to business today. We are setting a direct, no-nonsense hook right off the bat to completely tear down one of the most common and, frankly, the laziest root causes you're ever going to find in global audit reports. I'm talking about the classic excuse, blaming no SOP. Today, we're going to completely deconstruct this operational myth and explore exactly why the absence of a standard operating procedure is a totally fake root cause. Let's get right to it.
Okay, let's dive into this. I really want you to picture this scene in your head. You're auditing a sprawling manufacturing plant, right? And during your review, you discover a massive quality management failure. Inward materials, critical raw materials, were literally just brought in and not checked against the required Bureau of Indian Standards, or BIS. Or actually, maybe even worse, the finished product was completely cleared for dispatch without a single final quality assurance check. It's a huge failure, just sitting right there in plain sight on the shop floor.
So naturally, you sit across from the process owner, and as you start pointing out these glaring omissions, the conversation understandably gets a little tense. And right here is where we hit the crux of the whole issue. Is this the laziest root cause in auditing? Because what happens next is, to avoid a confrontation, to basically skip the really hard conversation, the auditor takes the easy way out. Instead of addressing the actual human failure, they just slap it on their report. Root cause, absence of an SOP. It's a remarkably easy escape hatch, isn't it? But as we're going to see, it's deeply, deeply flawed.
To understand why it's so flawed, we kind of need to take a step back and define what an SOP actually is. A standard operating procedure is simply a high-level control ensuring consistency. That's it. Its primary purpose is to guide the how the people operating a process do it uniformly. It's there to prevent a scenario where a task is done totally differently depending on who happens to be working the Tuesday afternoon shift. But here's the absolute critical takeaway. An SOP is merely internal guidance. It almost never overrides prescribed industry standards, and it certainly doesn't override basic professional competency. Let's ground this in reality with our first practical scenario. We're going to look at a case study involving a quality assurance engineer working at a bustling construction site. The engineer's main job today? Receiving ready-mix concrete, commonly known in the industry as RMC. Now, keep in mind, this is a highly standard, totally everyday task for a QA professional in this sector.
Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast when we put these two conclusions side by side. If that engineer completely fails to check the RMC against the relevant IS standards for concrete testing, what is the actual cause? I mean, is it the fake root cause, the idea that nobody handed him a printed piece of paper with an SOP on it, or is it the real root cause, a fundamental failure of professional competency, or just outright negligence? Blaming a missing piece of paper sounds totally absurd when you stack it up against the reality of the failure.
Let's look at the real reasons for this QA failure. Testing concrete to an IS standard, that is a fundamental, non-negotiable expectation of a QA engineer's job description. If he's skipping that test, the root cause is negligence. It's a massive competency gap. Or, hey, perhaps it's extreme operational pressure from management to clear those cement trucks out faster. Think about it. If an engineer is comfortably ignoring a national quality standard today, do you really think handing him a 20-page internal SOP tomorrow morning is going to magically fix his behavior? Absolutely not. No way.
Let's move to a totally different environment and see how this builds. We're pivoting our analysis away from the manufacturing shop floor, and we're taking this concept straight into a white-collar environment, corporate governance. Does the no SOP or no tool excuse hold water in the boardroom? Let's find out in our second case study. Imagine this. A company secretary completely misses several critical statutory filings under the Companies Act. This is a massive oversight. It leads to heavy financial penalties for the business. When the auditor comes in and reviews the process, they conclude with a frankly ridiculous fake root cause, absence of a compliance management tool. But you know what? Just like our QA engineer, this is fundamentally wrong. The real root cause goes much deeper. It stems from a severe lack of bandwidth or prioritization. Let's break down those real reasons for the governance failure. Look, a compliance management tool is just a control that aids monitoring. The absence of that software didn't cause a highly educated company secretary to suddenly forget basic corporate law, right? The real root cause here is systemic. It's a severe lack of bandwidth, it's poor prioritization by leadership, or maybe it's an understaffed legal department that simply cannot keep up with the daily workload. The missing tool is just a symptom, it is not the root cause. This brings us to a really foundational truth of professional work. Some things are just intrinsically etched into a professional's job description.
You simply do not need a written procedure for the absolute basics of your profession. A chartered accountant doesn't need an SOP to know they have to reconcile a bank statement. A QA manager doesn't need an SOP to remind them to check a mandatory BIS certification. Doing those things, that's the very definition of their roles.
Here is a golden rule of operations, and I really want you to let this sink in. Listen closely. The absence of a control is never the root cause of an issue. Let me say that one more time for the folks in the back. The absence of a control is never the root cause. If you can fully grasp this, your entire approach to auditing and problem solving is going to transform.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why falling into the no SOP trap is so dangerous. Now, the presence of an SOP is a fantastic high-level control that prevents risk. It is a great thing to have. But relying on the absence of an SOP as an excuse, that creates an incredibly dangerous false sense of security. When you blame no SOP, you're essentially giving management permission to spend weeks drafting these giant binder documents. They put that thick, dusty binder on a shelf, they dust their hands off, and they assume the problem is totally solved. Meanwhile, the actual negligence or competency gap just continues to silently destroy value out there on the floor. It is incredibly frustrating for anyone who actually cares about real compliance. So the crucial point is, how do we actually fix this? If we want to drive real process excellence, we have to follow these 3 steps. Number 1, audit the competency. Number 2, audit the bandwidth. And number 3, audit the behavior. We absolutely have to challenge auditors and managers alike to stop hiding behind missing documents and start having those tough, uncomfortable conversations about actual human performance and capacity.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. As you look at your own operations today, are you driving real excellence, or are you just hiding behind missing documents? It's really time to rethink our entire approach to quality and compliance. Well, if this explainer helps shift your perspective even a little bit, I'd love to invite you to join our community of risk professionals at the Agile Auditor over at Risk Vigilant Bharat. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep pushing for the real root cause.